Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the North Fair Oaks Community Council meeting corresponding to the month of November. We actually moved this meeting because it would have been on next week, but since it is Thanksgiving, the council decided to move it onto this week. So Mitzi, if you could please take roll.
Of course. Chair Everardo Rodriguez.
Here.
Vice Chair Beatriz Cerrillo.
Here.
Councilmember Rosario Gonzalez.
Here.
Councilmember Linda Lopez.
Here.
Councilmember Rosaura Lopez.
Here.
Councilmember Blair Whitney.
Here.
Councilmember Jennifer Ruiz.
Here.
Youth Member Francis Santos. Alternative Youth Member Esmeralda Rosales.
Thank you, Mitzi. We're going to have public comment. I should mention that we have a really packed agenda tonight, so we're going to try to move it along so that we can hear all the items of tonight's agenda. And so for the public comment, anyone may speak up to 2 minutes on any topics not on the agenda tonight. If you decide to do so, please fill out a speaker slip. It'll be given to you by the table at the entrance. And the council may not discuss or take action on items not on the agenda tonight. Is there any public comment?
There is Mike Morris.
Good evening. My name is Mike Morris, and I've lived in the Fair Oaks area for over 40 years. And my neighbors and I oppose the Dumbarton Rail Train. It's going to cause accidents, pollution, and crime in the area. We're really upset that it's been going and approved by certain San Mateo County supervisor, specifically Warren Slocum. He's a member of the MTC, and we think it's a conflict of interest that he represents members of North Fair Oaks and who are against the train. One other thing, it's an important community matter, and the main thing is that it's dangerous. It's going to go through a densely populated family neighborhood. North Fair Oaks has one of the highest numbers of children and families in the San Mateo County, and it's just a bad idea. There's better alternatives. Menlo Park has a train station that could be used. The roads could be changed. One other thing, the Facebook gave Samtrans money, and Samtrans has been pushing for the train, and they've been hiding information from us, and they've been presenting incorrect and inaccurate information to the people of North Fair Oaks. And also, my neighbors and I tried to attend some of the meetings that Samtrans had, and they wouldn't allow us in the meeting. For that reason, I would like the council to oppose and the train, and I'll give you all my information via email if you need to get in touch with me. Thank you.
That'll be great. Thank you very much. If you could leave your contact information. And just for clarification purposes, you're speaking about the Dumbarton Rail corridor?
Yeah, the Dumbarton.
Great. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Mike.
On the next item, we would like to welcome the new council member, Juan Carlos Pardo. Juan Carlos has already a lot of experience under his belt. He was a county employee at some point, doing work as a supervisorial aide, and so he is very much experienced with this sort of settings. So now he's going to be on the other side of the coin doing work for the community, and we are very happy and very excited to have him. So Juan Carlos, if you would like to say a few words.
Good evening, and thank you, Chair Abelardo, for that introduction. About 20 years ago, I worked for then Supervisor Rose Jacobs Gibson, and I was her legislative aide. So I was on the other side of the table, and now 20 years later, I have this opportunity to represent my community, and I appreciate the board members that took a leap of faith and allowed me to be on this council, so I hope I do everyone proud. Thank you.
Thank you. And I believe Tim is going to do the swearing in.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Juan Carlos Prado, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California, that I will take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about.
Again, welcome, Juan Carlos Pardo, perdón. I have to get my R's in the right place. And for the third item of the night, we're going to have a presentation. This will be a presentation that requires action, and it'll be a consideration of a use permit pursuant to Section 6500 of the San Mateo County zoning regulation to allow the continued operation of an urban winery. Its name is La Honda Winery, which is here in North Fair Oaks, associated temporary events that they're planning, and the utilization of a 48 off-site shared parking spaces through a shared parking arrangement with 2 nearby businesses' parking lots. The project is located at 2645 Fair Oaks Avenue. It's still here again in North Fair Oaks in San Mateo County. And we'll have this presentation by Laura Richstone, a project planner.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good evening. I'm Laura Richstone, the project planner, and I will be presenting the use permit application for La Honda Winery. So why does this project need a use permit? This area was recently rezoned, and in that rezoning, the use permits require, wineries require use permits. And then the second reason the application requires a use permit is for the off-site parking. When parking cannot be contained on the parcel itself, the county allows parking to be located off-site, but we review it first through a use permit to make sure that everything works out well. So those are the two reasons why it needs a use permit. So this is La Honda Winery. The parcel is outlined in red. As you can see, it's on Fair Oaks. Well, you can't see. It's on Fair Oaks near the intersection of MacArthur, and then Douglas is the farther street to the left. And it is comprised of 2 buildings. The first building on the right is a landscaping left is a landscaping business. And the second building on the right with the white roof is the La Honda Winery operation. This is just an overview of the project site. The site is outlined in yellow, and it's located in an industrial area, which is the pink-red area, and it's right across the street from a residential area, which is the blue colored area. So this is a floor plan of the parcel, and as you saw in the previous slides, it consists of 2 buildings and 2 different businesses. The landscape building is on the left. I'm sorry, it's so small. In the green, and the winery is highlighted in the blue on the right. The landscaping business consists of a Quonset hut structure that provides covered storage for their vehicles and equipment. And then there's a shared office in the blue part between the winery and the landscaping business. Yeah, and then there are 3 parking spaces on site in the purple. Here are some elevations of the building as it is currently. On the left is the existing building, and on the right is the proposed renovations to the building. The applicant and the owner are proposing the renovations to meet fire and building requirements. These renovations include removing the Quonset hut structure and the facade on the left side of the building, and installing a fence, which would essentially remove the covered storage for the landscaping business, but the landscaping business would still be in operation. It would just have outdoor storage behind the fence to provide screening. And the landscaping business would still retain their offices in the La Honda Winery building. As I said before, the area was rezoned in July 2019 to industrial mixed use. The previous zoning was just industrial by the Board of Supervisors. And the proposed project adheres to the policies of the North Fair Oaks Community Plan, which was adopted in 2011, I believe, and the development standards of the new industrial mixed use zoning district. Part of those development standards is parking, right? So the required parking for this project is broken down between the 2 uses, between the use for the winery and the production of wine and making the wine, and the event and tasting area. When you break down those square footages, it comes down to that this project requires 3 parking spaces for wine production and manufacture, and 13 parking spaces to accommodate temporary events. As you saw on the previous slide, there's only 3 parking spaces on the property. So to meet the parking needs, the applicant is already utilizing, but they're formalizing through this process, 51 off-site parking spaces, or 48, excuse me, in adjacent parking lots, and we'll go over that quickly. So here's kind of an aerial of the project site and the parking spaces. The project site is where the red is, and then the first shared parking lot is right next to the project site, and it provides 6 striped spaces in front. And then the second parking lot would be like half a block down, and that parking lot would provide 42, not 48, that's a typo. It would provide 42 parking spaces. So this is kind of just a blown up view of the parking spaces provided. So these are the 6 parking spaces provided at 2643 and 2663 Fair Oaks. 3 in the front, and then on one side, and then 3 in front on the other side. And then here are the parking spaces, and the majority of the parking spaces provided in the second parking lot, located at 2731 and 2761 Fair Oaks. And that parking lot has 42 spaces. So the standards for allowing an off-site shared parking include signed parking agreements with either the landowner or the lessees of those parking lots. And the applicant has already entered into those agreements, and they are included as attachments in the staff report. It requires that the parking is not located more than 800 feet away, which these parking lots are not. I believe they're 160 and about 600 feet away. And it requires that the peak hours of demand for La Honda Winery will not conflict with the peak hours for the business, and create more parking. So a parking study, which is also included as an attachment in the staff report, was conducted for this project. The study concluded that there would be no impacts from daytime events that La Honda Winery hosts. La Honda Winery, about 30% of their events are daytime events. They're from 7 in the morning to 4, and then nighttime events are from 5 to 10, 11. So for daytime events, La Honda Winery requires, and the county will also condition the permit to require that any group larger than 15 require group transportation. And then the study evaluated parking demand for an evening event, for an event that was at maximum capacity, to see what that parking demand would look like on the neighborhood. And it concluded that the parking lots, both the parking lots and the parking on site, provided enough parking to meet that demand. Staff requests, in conclusion, staff requests that the North Fair Oaks Community Council provide a recommendation to the zoning hearing officer on whether the required findings for a use permit can be made. And I am available for any questions if you have some. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Richmond. Yeah, go ahead, Blair.
Is there such a thing as like a probationary use permit? Like, we want to give it to you for a year and then get a report back? Because I feel like with Selby's Restaurant, we flubbed it, and we should have tried it out for a year and then seen what the impact was and then tinkered with it. Is there a mechanism like that with the winery?
Yes and no. So use permits usually have a 7 or a 10-year cycle, and if we can reduce that cycle to 7 years, and then we can also request admin reviews of the use at 2 or 3 years within that 7 to see if they are adhering, one, to the conditions, and if the conditions are still adequate. But there's no probational use permit. It's if you grant that entitlement, they have that entitlement for that period of time. Yeah.
Go ahead, Linda.
Through the chair. Typically, we've requested administrative reviews for situations that were causing problems. For example, Sports House on the corner of Edison and 5th, there were issues around parking, garbage, just a lot of neighborhood type complaints. And so we did in that situation approve, but on the condition that it be reviewed. I think we did that on a 6-month? I think we did like a 6-month review. But that's, I see that being used in cases where there are issues and you want to stay on top of them. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I was just giving that clarification on that. What's changed for the winery besides the beautification part of it? Are they wanting to do more special events? Is that because the big shared parking, that 42 space, mm-hmm. that's like over a block away. Mm-hmm. So what's changed? Because they've been there a long time.
Yeah, what's prompting, essentially?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's complicated. So they came in before the rezoning, and before the rezoning, they needed a use permit to do the temporary events. And then the rezoning happened, and they weren't complete before the rezoning. So now the rezoning happened, and they were deemed complete after the rezoning, so they're held to the new requirements. And the new requirements require a use permit for the winery itself, whereas before they didn't need a use permit for that. and then a use permit for the parking, where before they didn't need that. Before, they just needed a use permit for the temporary events.
And what are the conditions that have been negotiated to switch to the shared parking?
So
What's the agreement with the other
I think
businesses?
from my understanding, and if the applicant is here, he can
Oh.
expand on that. But it's just that we'll give you the keys, lock the parking lot when you're done, and make sure that your guests are out at the appropriate time. It's
Okay.
not, it's kind of,
And those businesses typically shut down at 5 o'clock?
no, one of them, I think the one that's closer to the winery shuts down at 2:30,
Oh.
and then one shuts down at about 4.
Uh-huh.
So there is a gap between when they close and when the parking lots would be
I see.
utilized.
Okay. Thank you, Laura.
Where all the residents and businesses in the surrounding area are notified about
Ye-
this?
Yes, there was a notification sent out in a 300-foot radius via mail, and the mailing was in both Spanish and English, notifying about the project and about the meeting tonight.
Through the chair,
Yes.
any response?
I didn't see any email today, and I haven't heard anything, but if there is response, I'll answer any questions they have.
A follow-up, has the owner had response?
The owner is the landscaping business, so they.
Oh, I thought somebody was here from the winery.
I don't know.
Oh, I
David?
misunderstood, sorry.
I don't. He was supposed to be here. I'm not sure if he's here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Again, on this item, we need council action. So if you guys have additional questions, please do ask them. Otherwise, I can entertain a motion. Go ahead, Juan Carlos.
Based on the county's council recommendation, I need to recuse myself from this item because I live at a very near proximity from this property, and there'll be a potential financial impact of some sort. So the council has suggested I recuse myself from this particular item. So I will not be able to vote.
Very well. Thank you, Juan Carlos. Otherwise, I will entertain a motion from other council members. Yeah, no, actually, is there any public comment for this specific item?
No public comment.
No public comment. Go ahead, Linda.
Okay, well, I will motion that the council recommend consideration of the use permit for La Honda Winery.
Do I get a second for the motion? We have a second. Mitzi, do you want to take vote?
Of course. Chair Everardo Rodriguez,
Yes?
Vice Chair Beatriz Cerillo. Yes. Councilmember Rosario Gonzalez. Yes. Councilmember Linda Lopez.
Yes.
Councilmember Rosaura Lopez.
Yes.
Councilmember Blair Whitney.
Yes.
Councilmember Jennifer Reese.
Yes.
Youth Member Francis Santos.
Sounds good. It sounds like the motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See, so that is- The next item, we have a presentation on proposed garbage and recycling rates for next year, 2020, from the Office of Sustainability, Lillian Clark.
They never go down.
So I'm not used to the red. Reminds me of Bozo. Good evening, members of the council, staff, and the community. My name is Lillian Clark, and I'm pleased to be here with you this evening to discuss the 2020 garbage and recycling rates in North Fair Oaks. Many of you recognize this map. I've shown this map before. This is the SBWMA service area in which we have franchise area. And you can see on the map with the arrow, that's where North Fair Oaks is. But we also have another area that's called the county franchise area, and that's all of the other little blue pockets. So we have 2 areas that we administer. So the county's role in the SBWMA is we set the rates annually. We ensure that the contractor Recology is complying with the franchise agreement for our 2 service areas. We make recommendations and conduct special events such as the shredding event we held recently at North Fair Oaks Community Center. And this year we also added e-waste to that collection. We manage customer feedback regarding services or if I get calls from their property tax bills. And we are one of 12 members in the SBWMA. So as a member of the SBWMA, each rate year, the SBWMA conducts a rate setting process for the services you receive. And through this process, the contractor conducts an annual audit of the revenue and the costs for servicing the area. And our areas are broken up into the 2 service areas. So one area would be the cost for the county franchise area. And in this case, what I'm presenting to you tonight is the costs that are associated with North Fair Oaks. And then the contractors in this rate review process, typically what they do is they apply the CPIs that are for labor or fuel and service level adjustments if there's more carts or lifts. And then the county conducts an independent analysis of rate recommendations. We work with a consultant and we thoroughly analyze all of the information that's in these rate application reports. And then we make a final recommendations that are approved by our Board of Supervisors for adoption. Now, the county looks at the rates over a 5-year period. So when we're given the rate application report is typically for this year moving forward. And we like to see what will happen in 5 years. What kind of rate structures would we have over a 5-year period? Here you can see the current cost of service. So if we were to look in North Fair Oaks, you get 232s or you get 164. So the actual cost to service all 3 carts, which means collection, processing, and disposal, would be $53.73. And the actual cost for servicing 232s would actually be double that amount. So we're showing $470 or $47.71, but that's actually for servicing 132. So in North Fair Oaks, you get 232s or 164. So that would be double that cost. And our current rate is $33.40 for servicing the carts. We anticipated an increase for disposal and processing in 2020 and 2021 because we knew that the SBWMA was negotiating a new contract with the landfill, and it's Ox Mountain, which is our landfill in San Mateo County. And of course, their costs have gone up, so they've negotiated some new rates there. In addition to that, as you may all know, China has not been accepting the recycling. And what that's done to the industry is our commodities don't have much value. And in some cases, in some jurisdictions, they're actually paying to have recycling processed. So we too are experiencing this loss in revenue in the SBWMA on the commodity side. So our recycling is not as valuable. The SBWMA also provided us the actual data for what they're projecting for the 2021 contract. So this rate year, we also included those costs into our analysis over the 5-year period because we knew that there were going to be some significant increases. So the new Recology contract factored in service level adjustment true-ups. So what they did was they took what they were doing in a previous calendar year, and am I correct, it was 214? So Mike from Recology is here with us. So they looked at 214, 215, and 216, and then determined what they think the cost will be for 20 and 2021. And then that has to do with how many lifts they do, how many pulls. So typically when you have a commercial bin, when they have to pull that bin, they call that a pull. When they have to lift your cart, so you have 3 carts at your home, each one of those, they calculate the cost to lift each one of those carts, which is the majority of the cost for servicing bins at your home is for the collection. And then they applied an adjustment of 75 cents to these, or 75% to these direct costs. So they didn't take the whole entire amount, they took an index. They also included some fuel costs. They anticipated what the fuel costs might be in 2021. And then they also looked at some minor service level adjustments that might be occurring. In total, there's 17% increase in the collection costs, which equate to about $286,000. The fuel cost is increasing 1% at about $20,000, and service level adjustments will be projected to increase about 0.9%, $17,000. So in total, the Recology collection costs in 2021 will be 19.2% higher to the jurisdiction than they are currently. And then again, the disposal and processing, those landfill contract costs and the commodity loss, those increases were 14.8%. So you add the two together is what we're looking at in terms of the industry. So the good news is this. We have increased rates the last few years over the CPI to buy down some of these projected disposal and new Recology contract costs. So we knew this was coming, so we tried to increase the rates a little bit to start to factor in some of these costs. The bad news is we still need an increase because we didn't anticipate that the landfill, and we didn't anticipate China, and so we didn't really anticipate the 14.8%. We actually thought our landfill costs would only be about 8% higher, but 14 doubled what we expected. So the overall goal for us is really to try to align the rates to the cost of service. So we're proposing an 8% increase for the 232s or the 164, and we're proposing an 8% increase to the commercial carts that are on the tax roll, and it's also the commercial customers that have a 32-gallon at home. Again, you will not see these rate increases on the tax roll until the tax roll next year, so this would be in July. But folks who are not on the tax roll, some of these commercial customers, they will see it. We want to, the rates will be effective February 1st. So what this means in the increase is $2.67 per month, which is $32 annually. And again, it's for the minimum level of service. We won't be touching any of the commercial bin rates, so the 1 yard, 2 yard, 3 yard bins will stay the same price that they are currently. And I also put in some data here, the Recology subscription numbers, so you can actually see on the residential side, we have 25 customers who are using the 20-gallon. We have 194 customers that are using the 32-gallon, and most of our customers are using the 64-gallon cart, 2,401. Now, what do the service what do you get for the money that you pay? So this is just going to give you kind of an idea. It's the weekly collection of all three carts. There's commercial gets weekly collection of garbage, and currently they have unlimited recycling. That may be changing in the future because our state legislator passed an organics law, 1383, which is requiring all jurisdictions to implement organic recycling at every service address. So we may be seeing some changes in the future related to the commercial side because we have to have mandatory organics collection. But you also get the disposal and processing that's going on. The SBWMA does own the transfer station and the recyclery, so all of the processing that's done at that location and brought to the different facilities, that's part of the cost. You also get your on-call bulky waste collection for residential customers. You get 2 of those a year. And I want to remind you that in January, they do not provide that service because they're collecting the holiday trees. So if you're going to schedule, because it resets itself every calendar year, you want to make sure that you do it tonight when you go home if you have a bulky item collection before the holidays. And then we also do the annual confidential document shredding. And like I said, this year we also did the e-waste event. And then you have all of the stuff that you can drop off at Shoreway. You can drop off your recycling, your latex paint, your mattresses for free, your cooking oil if you fry your turkey during the holiday. They also accept small appliances that are broken, so you can bring your curling iron and your toaster and your coffee maker. So does anyone have any questions?
Thank you, Lillian, very much for your presentation. If council members have any questions, please get ready. And I do have a couple of questions, Lillian.
Okay.
One is, so these rates are set only for the unincorporated areas in San Mateo County?
Correct. So we have 2 separate rates. So we have the county franchise area rates, and we have the North Fair Oaks rates. So these rates are for North Fair Oaks. Those are the rates for North Fair Oaks.
And on an average, do they tend to be lower, higher, just about the same?
They're lower than what we're currently charging in the county franchise area.
Okay. My other question was, is the cost increase only for the garbage container, or that is included for the other containers, the recycling containers as well?
Yeah, so what happens is the way garbage is charged, it's for all 3 carts. It's for your 64-gallon recycling and your 96-gallon organics. And that cost is part of your garbage costs, your garbage rate, all 3 services.
Are there any alternatives, or is there any different for people who don't utilize the other 2, the recycling bins, or is it just a flat fee per residence?
When Recology bid the contract, they bid for 3 carts at the curb. If you choose not to use it, they don't break out the cost separately in terms of. That's not how we receive it in the rate application. It's one set of costs. Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Any other questions from council members?
Does that sound correct, Mike? That's correct. Sure. This is Mike from Recology.
And then we can have one more question from a council member, because we need to move on to the next
Good evening.
item.
I'm Mike Kelly. I'm the general manager at Recology, San Mateo County. And the rate we charge is on the black garbage cart, and that's how all jurisdictions generally do it. It's one rate for that cart, but it provides, it allows for the service of all 3 carts, the black, the blue, and the green. When we do submit our rate application, there are costs identified for collection of black, blue, and green, but again, every jurisdiction just combines them, calls it SFD, single family dwelling, and then that's the rate you charge.
Understood. Thank you. And Linda?
Yeah, if you were to increase the number of times we could have bulky item pickup, does that throw the whole thing
That would
way off?
That would increase the cost.
Because we've had 2 a year for years,
Correct.
and everything changes except that. So, no, so.
They are work, so I will tell you that I have been on a committee where they are talking about a different program where folks might get a voucher, and you can go at any time during the year and use your 2 vouchers. So, there are things in the work, but what happens is if we increase the bulky items that are allowed to customers, that means then we also have to add a driver or 2, another garbage cart. Garbage carts are not cheap. I mean, would you say they're 500,000? Yeah. Oh, and then the carts, yeah. So then you have additional costs, right? And if it's just for our service area, then we bear the cost of that truck. So,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Thanks very much, Lillian. Is there any public comment about this item?
No public comment.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
Same to
Thank
you.
you.
And I do want to remind you, I did bring recycling guides because of the holiday waste.
Nice.
Make sure you
We will. Thank you.
I already got mine scheduled for Tuesday, my pickup.
Great.
Great. And
If you don't use it.
And we will move on to the next item of tonight. It'll be the Department of Public Works having a presentation on various items related to North Fair Oaks, including the Middlefield Road Improvement Project status update, pedestrian walkway on 6th and 7th Avenues on Middlefield and Middlefield Road, the pilot parking permit, and the street trees planting on the public right-of-way. We'll have this presentation by Ann Stillman and Mr. Joe Lococo. Hello.
Hi, good evening. I'm Ann Stillman with the County of San Mateo Department of Public Works. And one of the projects that we've been working on is the Middlefield Road Improvement Project. So some of you I certainly recognize from past presentations when we've talked through some of the elements of the project. So I'm going to try to go through it quickly because I know I have 7 minutes. So here we go. When it comes to the project itself, there are key elements. There are roadway improvements from Pacific to Fifth Avenue. We're undergrounding the overhead utilities and taking down the wooden poles between MacArthur Avenue to Fifth, and then we're incorporating sanitary sewer pipeline replacement from Douglas Avenue to Sixth Avenue because this project is also located in the Fair Oaks Sewer Maintenance District, which is one of the county-governed sewer districts. Some of the elements of this is a pictorial showing you some of the elements, the new lane configuration. Middlefield Road between the project limits will be switched from 1 lane in each direction, a left-hand turn lane. We're going to be widening the sidewalks. We're going to be installing new street lights, overhead vehicular lights, and then also pedestrian lights, putting in buffered bike lanes. So there's sort of this separation between the parked cars and the bike lanes. We'll be installing bike lanes. High visibility crosswalks, that are these ladder crosswalks or higher visibility. At each of the crossings across Middlefield Road, we'll have the rapid rectangular flashing beacons. So you press a button and then the lights going off. You have some of those out here already. We'll be doing traffic signals at one intersection. I'll go over that in a little bit more detail. Installing street trees, putting in bike racks, benches, trash receptacles, and as I mentioned, putting the overhead utility lines underground, and then installing some green infrastructure and stormwater treatment features as part of this project as well. This was a pictorial you've seen before. This is just depicting what, an artist's rendition of what the roadway would look like after the project is complete. I mentioned traffic signal. So we are doing a very large signalization. This is Pacific. This is the driveway coming in and out of the clinic and Redwood Junction. This is the Dumbarton Spur line. This is Northside, and this is Hurlingame. So we're going to be installing a signal here for the driveway, and then also at Pacific. And these signals will be interconnected with the railroad so that if a train were coming by, then the signals need to operate and the railroad arms need to go down. So it's a very big signalization and a lot of work in terms of coordinating with the railroad to get everything approved by them. Some of the work that'll need to be done at the intersection, and we've gone over this in the past, and I recognize some of you are newer to this, so you probably haven't heard it before, but the railroad is requiring that we put in a raised median island here so that people can't make maneuvers into North Side or out of North Side. This is going to be a sharp turn, so people aren't going to be turning into North Side from Middlefield this way. And also to be a right turn out. So because this will be signalized, the traffic that's heading southbound on Middlefield will be turning left onto Hurlingham to access some of the north side areas and properties. This is just this is what I mentioned when I mentioned the rectangular rapid flashing beacon. This is essentially what it looks like for the crosswalks. Parking spaces. So one of the concerns really was loss of parking because the parking on this project will move from diagonal parking to parallel parking. And with that, there's a reduction of parking spaces. Before the project, there's 125 on-street parking spaces. Afterwards, there would be 78. So we worked to construct 2 parking lots, one at 2nd and Middlefield Road that created 43 spaces, and one at Berkshire and Huntington Avenue that created 16 spaces. So the total spaces after the project and including these 2 parking spaces would be 137, which would be greater than the parking spaces that are out there now. This is just a picture. You've probably seen that. This is the 2nd and Middlefield parking lot. And then this is the other parking lot. This is really on San Francisco Public Utility property, but we have a permit to be able to construct this here. So that's another smaller parking lot. Schedule, people would be interested. What is the schedule? When are you going to start? So right now, the tentative start date for construction would be hopefully summer 2020. We do still need agreement from the railroad, California Public Utilities Commission, Samtrans, PG&E, San Francisco Public Utilities Commission. So we're still working on some of those approvals. We also have some easements that need to be required, especially by the clinic. Typically, the work hours would be 8 to 5 p.m. Monday through Friday, but the Department of Public Works would need to review what a contractor would submit in terms of a work schedule and hours and approve it. And then we believe that the project will take at least a year and a half to build. How do you think it's going to work? People might ask, how are you going to get this work done? What is it going to look like in terms of sequencing? So the schedule will really be up to the contractor, but we would envision that the underground work, trenching in the roadway and in the sidewalks to put pipes or conduits underground would be the first order of work. Then there would be sidewalk demolition and construction, then road work, and then installation of street trees and street lights and traffic signals. There will be some work associated with the railroad crossing that'll be done by the railroad. And then the utilities would pull all of the wires underground and energize the underground system, and then eventually take down the wooden poles so things would look different. And access during construction is always an issue too. So we'll be writing our specifications in a way that the contractor can only disturb 2 blocks at a time on one side of the road and provide temporary pedestrian walkways and access. Also, we know that people need to have delivery trucks and vehicles get to businesses, so there will be requirements for that in the contract. Emergency vehicle access will also need to be provided, and we'll be working with Samtrans for bus service during construction. This was just to show you that when businesses and homes are going to receive power from underground, there will be work that will be done, and this is showing how a trench would be. This is just for illustrative purposes, but you've got to get the power over to the building, and then you've got to bring it up and installation of a new box on a building, and then connect it to the existing box on the building. So all of this work needs to be done too on the properties or the businesses and residentials that are receiving underground service. And that is part of the project and part of the work that PG&E will have a contractor doing. So what do we have left to do? We need to finalize the plans and specs. We need to obtain approvals or permits from and coordinate with all of these entities. And as I mentioned, we've got some easement work for the driveway at the clinic and Redwood Junction. And then we're also working with the county's Information Services Department because it's the desire to have Wi-Fi along Middlefield Road within the project limits. And I didn't see the sign, so that means it was 7 minutes or less. Do you have any questions?
So we're going to have the question section right after each section. Great. Thank you. Council members? Does that work? Yes. Okay. Go ahead, Juan Carlos.
Through the chair, a question on the your illustration there on Northside Avenue, which is a very short but very complicated street. There's a tremendous traffic congestion there because of the school, particularly in the morning and the afternoon in rush hour, and there's been tremendous accidents there, unfortunately. So I like what I see here in the projected crosswalks and such. Is there any possibility that instead of just making Northside Avenue one-way only from Stanford, that you would go back 2 more blocks and make it from Hampshire Avenue and make all of Northside just one-way?
We haven't considered that as part of the project, but I mean, I'm hearing your input. I think as part of the project, no, not necessarily, but it could potentially be something that could be evaluated. See, now I was worried that people wouldn't like this, but I've heard positive feedback, actually, that it's sort of problematic. So, and really, it's a requirement of the railroad in terms of you can't have anybody stuck in a position where they might be crossing the rail, you know, if a train were to come through. So they're very particular with how we work the intersection, the location of everything, and the interconnection between the vehicular traffic and the railroad traffic.
So, I'm sorry, are you done?
Yes, I am.
Go ahead, Linda.
So, Ann, the decision to do the northbound out of North Side, coming off of North Side, right?
This.
And that you could only go northbound
Yes.
on Middlefield. You're saying that's the, because that idea came up without any discussion. So whose idea was that?
Right, so the railroad needs
Because,
to...
I'm
Yeah.
bringing that up because there has been no discussion about the impact on the neighborhood. If people coming down North Side can't go southbound on Middlefield, they're going to cut through somewhere, right?
Right,
Go
they're-
up to Douglas, or can they come out Hurlingame?
They can come out Hurlingame, and
Because I
because
saw something on the Hurlingame.
Right.
What is that?
they can come out Hurlingame, and because now there will be a signal there, they'll be able to head southbound on
Okay.
Middlefield Road, and it'll be signalized.
What are those little marks?
These?
Yeah.
Those are crosswalks. They're high visibility crosswalks.
Okay.
See how visible they are?
Okay.
Yes. And then when it comes to this median right here, see, because traffic would be stopped here, I mean, you're right. The median came up really through discussions with the
Yeah.
railroad because they have to approve of our design and everything that we're doing. And I do feel like we've been working with them for years. It is a very long train and slow process. But they were saying you need to put a median here because if this light were to stop traffic, a train were to come through, there's still vehicles that could move this way, and they don't want that to occur. They don't want anybody to get trapped, on the roadway where the rail is.
So I really think in this plan, it has to be worked in there, all the signage that needs to go up, getting the people before they come down North Side, before they discover they can't go left, right?
Yes.
That they're going to have to cut through what, San Mateo, is that? What's
Yeah, I
that
don't have
street?
all my street names memorized, but
Yeah,
they
and
would.
get over to Hurlingame or go up to Douglas, because, it's a habit, routines. So I hope that that's all included in the plan. I had, electrical conversions. Is there additional cost to the owner?
So
How's that going to work?
So I think you were around, just like I was around, when the Middlefield Road first phase took place. And at that time, these conversions were not an allowable expense of the Rule 28 underground.
Oh, okay.
But the rules have changed because I think it is really hard to get everybody to do what they need to do. The rules have changed so that PG&E, if an agency opts in and decides that they want this work to be done and paid for by Rule 20A, then funds, then that's allowable and acceptable. So that's a change from the past.
Okay.
Where the past, it was really that we had to
There was
coax
a big
along and
deal about
encourage
that,
the
right.
property owners, and they would only go 100 feet beyond the
Right.
trench, and this is a totally different schematic. And this we did get from PG&E and, verified that as well in terms of who would be doing what. So I think it will, knock on wood, hopefully, it'll be more painless than the last time we did it, because it was pretty, and that's not to say that, construction will be messy. It is messy, and it will be messy. We know that, but as some of the measures that I tried to mention, those are things we're trying to do to minimize the impact, but it will be messy because that is the way construction is.
So, and I know you're not presenting the mitigation
Right.
plan, so is that still going to come through our county manager's office? You're not dealing with that,
I'm not dealing
correct?
with that right now. I know there's been some recent communications at the county about that because I think that Real Property was originally sort of working on that. I think it's moved over to maybe the county manager's office, but that'll be another aspect of this project.
Right, okay.
The sustainability plan.
Thank you, Ann.
Go ahead, Blair.
If they're digging up the street to underground the power anyway, there's like 5 different companies running fiber optics and trying to get upgraded internet, and they're like doing micro trenching along El Camino and other places. If it's possible to just say, by the way, we're digging up all of Middlefield, there's an opportunity here. If you want to stick a conduit in, do it now instead of waiting a year after we're done and trying to dig up the street again. I think they're focused on the rich areas where they're going to get a lot of subscribers, and they may bypass North Fair Oaks because they may think, well, we're not going to make a lot of money there. But if there's a window of opportunity for them to just run the wires, have the capacity, and then over time, as more buildings get built, it'll be an amenity that I think everyone would appreciate having access to, because I think the game's changing where it's not just Comcast or AT&T. In 5 years, it might be some choices.
Right, so in Middlefield already, I want to say MFJ, is there another one, or MFMJN, whatever. But so what I didn't really mention, I talked about the utilities going underground, but we are working with PG&E, AT&T, Comcast, and Wave. So those are all those that are out there above ground and that will be in the trenches. It's called a joint trench because we're all sharing together. We haven't necessarily reached out to other providers to ask whether they want to hop in the trench. I think right now it's getting everybody that's overhead into the trench and getting the wires down. But I know there already are providers that look at Middlefield Road, and it's a great sort of route for them to get from here and there and provide service to businesses and property owners. But we're not necessarily actively asking for more people to hop in the trench, but I think we'll have 2 conduit. One would be for county, the Wi-Fi, and then I believe we have a spare conduit in there as well. Yes, because when you dig up the road, it's like that one trench.
I have one follow-up.
Okay, if it's a follow-up.
Oh, no, it's not. It's about parking.
Okay. Why has this been delayed, and is this going to affect the cost?
Well, so delayed. Let's see. We have been working on this for quite some time, but I was sort of outlining the additional things. We need to get everything in line, especially working with the railroad. As a project is estimated, we were asked to estimate this project, I want to say it was 2014 or prior. So we did our best to estimate, and construction costs, of course, increase over time, and they will. And the climate that we're in right now, contractors are super busy, and so all of it will really depend upon the bid prices we get to. So we've been working on it. We continue to work on it. There are a lot of pieces to it, and I think it's really important to try to make sure you get it as right as possible, because anytime you come up with things during construction, it's going to cost you more money. And the environmental document for this, we certified the environmental document already, so that part's done. So that's a milestone. So now it's kind of putting the last pieces in line. And then we'll see what we get for bids. We'll have a long enough bid period, but hopefully we get some good bids on the job too.
Great.
And you've probably noticed down the street to the north, I mean, that's a Redwood City project. They're doing, I don't know what they're doing in terms of street amenities, but when you drive that way, you see some of the work they're doing, and they're undergrounding. That's what it's sort of looking like. But they don't have as many businesses right up against the sidewalk. I mean, this is a little bit different out here. So, but it helps you visualize what it may look like. And I think they've had some issues out there too, so hopefully try to minimize that during construction.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
And so next is the pedestrian walkway.
Good evening. I'm Joe Lococo, Deputy Director with the Department of Public Works. I have 3 different topics that I'm going to review with you tonight. So the first one is there was a question a while back about 6th and 7th Avenue on Middlefield Road, and whether or not that would be a candidate site for pedestrian crossing improvements, either rapidly flashing beacons or some other improvements. So just to show you, this is the way things lie right now. On the right-hand side of the screen, that's over at Garfield School where there's a pedestrian scramble. So you can see all the yellow markings in there. Stands out pretty brightly. The pedestrian scramble is a situation where if you press the button and there are pedestrians waiting in all directions, there will be a red for traffic simultaneously so that you can cross in any direction during that scramble period. So that's what exists near the school. Where the dot is by the M, that's Middlefield and 5th Avenue. That too is a signalized intersection. So one of the things that we look at when we look at adjoining intersections is the proximity to signalized intersections. 6th and 7th are particularly close. But we also do take a look to make sure that there isn't a need for what we call warrants for an actual signal system at that location. So that is based on the warrants. We did take a look at cross traffic, and we took a look at pedestrian counts. And what we're highlighting here are the pedestrian counts, since that seemed to be the primary topic. So over here at 6th Avenue, over a 2-hour period, we're showing the volume of pedestrians in one direction and versus the other direction. So if you look at right over there on the right-hand side, we're showing 31 pedestrians crossing in a 2-hour period in one direction, 15 in the other direction. The cross-traffic, pedestrian traffic along Middlefield Road there you'll see is a bit greater. This is over at 7th Avenue. Again, roughly 46 pedestrians over a 2-hour period crossing Middlefield, 28 in one direction, 18 in the other direction. So when we looked at this, those blocks are so short between 5th and 6th and between 7th and the pedestrian scramble at 8th is we wouldn't recommend rapidly flashing beacons, and it doesn't meet the warrants for traffic signals. However, what we think makes sense here, and you can do this based on proximity to school, right now there are white-colored crosswalks. They just have the white borders. There's pavers in between. We can really brighten that up. So what we're recommending is that given it the proximity to school, we can go ahead and put yellow crosswalks in. This proposal here would be to put yellow crosswalks in at both those locations where crosswalks currently exist. So on 7th Avenue, there are 2 crosswalks, one that's marked along Middlefield Road, one crossing Middlefield Road. At 6th, you have crosswalks along Middlefield Road on both sides, and you have one crossing Middlefield Road. So that would be our recommendation at this site as far as the next upgrade. What will play into this is that when the Fifth Avenue undergrounding project comes into play, the underground improvements go to Fifth. There will be a transition zone that still needs to be kind of finalized as to how that then ties into the improvements to the south. So that was our take as far as looking at that intersection and the conclusions that we came to and what we think makes sense for that intersection.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council members?
I have a question. Is this consistent with the plan that was just previously showed? I understand it's not the same streets, but is it consistent with how the rest of the Middlefield would look like from a crosswalk perspective?
There's a school nearby. So the yellow crosswalks are based on proximity to a school. So what you'll see on the other parts of Middlefield Road is you will see the white crosswalks. They will all have enhanced striping. What's interesting at this location is the crosswalks that exist at 6th and 7th basically have the pavers in the center and just the white borders. I think normally or in the past what we've done is we haven't necessarily striped over those brick pavers. But we did that recently. It seems to hold up pretty well. We think we still can get the color and the visibility by adding that treatment. So it's a little different just because of the school proximity. In general, I'd say it's generally consistent with what's happening elsewhere. What's kind of unique here are the proximity of the two signalized intersections. And on the other side of Fifth Avenue, you have some longer gaps before you have the next set of signals.
Okay, is there any projected thoughts about doing an illumination to that in the future, besides just painting?
So our thinking is at this location that this would be the appropriate treatment. The rapidly rectangular, rapid flashing beacons, we don't like those doing those on really short blocks when there are already established intersections nearby. So I think if in fact we didn't have the signalized intersection so close on either side, then we would have considered this to be a candidate for the rectangular rapidly flashing beacons, such as the ones that are being put in further to the north on the upcoming project.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm bringing back then residential permit parking. So this is a little bit of an update of where we are. It's been a little bit of a haul. So just a little background on this is we presented to the council back in April 2018 on this. And at the time, what we were doing was putting together a residential permit parking program. The idea was that this would be a countywide program. We also presented some tweaks to the council again in June 2018. We worked a little bit with the Sheriff's Department. We essentially finalized a program that we brought to the board in July 2019. At the board's meeting, the board directed us to not move forward with a countywide residential permit parking program, but to instead look to do a pilot program specifically in North Fair Oaks. So that's what we're looking at. So right now, there are 3 locations specifically that we're focused on as potential pilot locations. We talked about Edison Way and the Sports House. Obviously, some of the challenges there are commercial on one side, residential on the other. 6th Avenue off of Middlefield Road, we did receive a petition from them, and we also received several requests from the East Selby neighborhood also for a residential permit parking program. So we've had some dialogue with the Sheriff's Department. We're also working with Supervisor Slocum's office. At this point, we don't have direction yet on which area to go ahead and do the pilot in. So we continue to work with both the Sheriff's Office and with Supervisor Slocum's office to go ahead and select a location that we can move forward with. the highlights of the program, and essentially what we're talking about as far as the pilot goes is that in most ways it would resemble the residential permit parking program that we were looking to adopt as a countywide program. There'll be a couple exceptions. So once we select a location, we will reach out to the property owners in that area just to make sure that, as a whole, that community does support the idea. We aren't really looking at doing really short blocks. We think that you need to at least be somewhat regional on these programs. So we're looking for implementation to be in an area that's at least 1,000 feet long, continuous. There's an option, understanding that the challenges, the parking challenges are somewhat different. The program could be, depending on the community, the neighborhood's interest, either a daytime program on weekdays, or it could be an overnight program. With the residential permit parking program and also the pilot program, there is a 2-hour maximum where you could park without a permit. So visitors, people who are contractors who are coming by for less than 2 hours, not really an issue there. The permit parking program, which you'd be putting on your car, that itself would give you the right to park there for more than 2 hours. There'd be a limited number of visitor permit parking requests that are also available. So if you're throwing a party, you can go ahead and get those permits just for that party. We are looking at fees on the ultimate program, but as far as the pilot program, we're looking to do that as a no-fee program. We're also looking at 2 permits per household, 1 permit per apartment unit, and then if there are requests for additional permits, those would be as requested. And I think for those, we would look and try to gauge how well the program is working. If we feel like there is available additional parking, then we would be inclined to look at allowing additional permits on a case-by-case basis. If we feel like it's already completely parked out, then it would defeat the purpose to give an unlimited number of permits to individual homes. So again, where we're at right now is we're looking to determine the location of the program. We do want to make sure that we have property owner support. Once we have that in place, then it's just a matter of essentially the time frames and getting all the components of the program put together. And anytime we do parking restrictions of any kind, those need to be adopted by the board. So there would have to be a corresponding board ordinance that establishes, even on a temporary basis, those parking limitations. So in a nutshell, that's kind of where we're at right now, and I'm ready for any questions on that.
There any questions on this item? Go ahead, Linda.
So, Joe, I thought people could opt out. That say you do it in Selby Park, say the first block of Dexter wants to do it, permit parking, but the second block closer to Glendale doesn't want to. So is that true that that block can opt out of it?
Well, so as long as we have complete blocks and at least 1,000 feet in length, the people in adjacent blocks can go ahead and not be included in the program. So if we take East Selby Park, it wouldn't be all of East Selby Park. It could be just Glendale and an adjacent
But
street.
you're not going to break up the blocks, they have to be.
But we're not going to break up the blocks because we're concerned that that just pushes the problem to that next block over. So there wouldn't be an opt-out within that continuous 1,000 feet, but the limits could be really established by where the level of support is.
And what's the thing about the petition? Was that something the 6th Avenue people did on their own, or?
That's correct.
So it was their own petition, not a county thing? I mean.
Yeah. So they submitted a formal petition.
Okay.
So we did get outreach from those folks as well as from East Selby Park, but for the East Selby community, it was more of an outreach and emails and a dialogue, as opposed to something where on 6th Avenue, I think they felt it important to demonstrate that on that block that they already had support. So I think they were doing some of the front end on their own.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right. I
Okay.
guess.
So the last item, there were some questions on landscaping improvements that would be allowed in the county right away. I think there's an interest in perhaps planting within the community. So just real briefly, we previously had a list of approved trees that we would allow in the public right away. So it's here. I'd be happy to get that to you. In the right of way, there are areas where we are apt to allow additional landscaping, specifically trees. There are areas that we're going to look out to make sure that that our concerns would be addressed first. So typically there are areas that we're not going to allow landscaping, namely if they're taking away off-street parking that currently exists, if the trees have the possibility of affecting sight distance, if the trees are likely to go ahead and cause damage to the adjacent roadway or the sidewalks. So just quick examples. Over here, this is out in the avenues, place where we would look at allowing parking. Folks would have to apply for an encroachment permit, but you have at least 8 feet, so you're not impacting parking. This tree is set back far enough where it really doesn't impact the utilization of the road, and it's certainly not going to impact, cause damage to the road based on its setback. Here's another example of a site where we would consider this. This is out in the sidewalk area, a planter strip. So certainly trees in the planter strip, as long as the right type of tree is planted, would be acceptable. So the process would pretty much be simple, is individual property owners can apply for an encroachment permit for the county to allow them to plant a tree in front of their home. If a block, for example, or several blocks are interested in planting trees uniformly, then we can go ahead and accept basically what I'll call a regional permit application from multiple property owners for that area. So we can accept it on a property frontage case basis or in total. And I know that we're short on time. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
Any questions from council members?
Through the chair. I know you briefly just flashed the list of species of trees. I'm just concerned, I'm a landscape contractor, and I obviously have a lot of interest in there. I know there's no time to get into further details of this, but has there been thought about the kind of trees that you're allowing? I know that the root system, the trees can vary a lot. I'm just concerned that a long-term effect of any potential root damage to the pavement or to has that been taken into consideration?
Yeah, so basically the trees that we're looking at would be trees that generally have like a taproot system, so they're not be as likely to go ahead and damage the adjacent areas. So, for example, a eucalyptus tree would not be a good candidate as a street tree, but some of these other trees that we're looking at, we think they'd be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any cost on the encroachment permit, and about average, how long might that take?
So there is a cost for the encroachment permit, but what we can do is if in fact there's, let's say again, for an entire block there's interest, we can treat it as a single encroachment permit.
Oh.
And so the cost then really would be minimal per person,
Right.
because you have multiple people paying into, essentially just to cover the processing fee for Public Works on that.
Right. Thank you. And I think that's it for our questions. Is there any public comment on this particular item?
So, through the chair, yes, item 4 does. It's about the NFO project update, and that's Gabriela Valencia.
Right?
Hi. Good evening. My name is Gabriela Valencia. I'm a North Fair Oaks resident for more than 20 years, and I brought some pictures to share with the North Fair Oaks Council. Is that okay? Can I give it to you?
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm actually here to request that the North Fair Oaks Council request adequate care for the few trees that we do have on Midfield Road currently. The pictures that you're getting are pictures of the trees and the way they were landscaped earlier this year. Some of you may have noticed that the trees were trimmed, but really that trimming was really like chopping that was done. And if a landscape company did that to one of our trees in our own home, we would probably never hire that landscaping company again. The type of chopping that was done to these trees, it shocks the trees, and it's been done before, but I think that's probably the reason why the trees haven't really grown. The trees were probably planted more than 15 years ago, and if you notice, they're still very small. So some of them have died, and they've never been replaced. There are at least 3 or 4 that have died and they've never been replaced. So I asked the members of the council to please demand better landscaping service and that the new trees be planted on the spots where the original trees have died. And I ask that you please request that this be done sooner rather than later, because there's always a tendency to say, oh, let's do this together with the new project when the Midfield redesign happens. But I think it shouldn't have to wait. There's no reason for it. And if you think about what the standards would be in a city like Palo Alto, something like that would never go there. So thank you.
Thanks very much.
And if I may just, and I appreciate that, thank you.
Of course.
One of the challenges that we have had with some of the Middlefield trees are some of the businesses taking it upon themselves to cut the trees back pretty aggressively. And I think that's in part because they might feel that the trees as they're growing are blocking the visibility of their business. So that is a challenge, is that, we're more inclined to do more minimal trimming because we're just trying to keep it out of the road section and out of the area where people are walking. So we do have, there are a couple instances in particular where property owners have cut off pretty much everything and just kind of left the stump with some bare limbs coming off. So it is a challenge that we do face, and I just wanted to let you guys, make sure that you guys were aware of that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the next item will be a presentation on the revitalization of Cargill, DMB's development proposal for the Salt Ponds in Redwood City. Presentation by Marsha Cohen from the Redwood City Neighbors United.
Good evening. My name's Marsha Cohen, and I've been a resident in North Fair Oaks for over 30 years. And I spoke briefly to the council about the proposed development on the salt ponds in Redwood City in June, I believe. And I said I would be back, and so now I'm back. Let's see. Uh-oh. Which one do I use? The left. Okay. Thanks. Okay. So this is going to be a fairly brief agenda, a little background, current status, and what this means for the future of North Fair Oaks. A little bit about Redwood City Neighbors United. We organized Redwood City Neighbors United in 2011 to make sure that our neighbors and local elected officials were aware that Cargill and their luxury home developer, DMB, had plans to develop the salt ponds, and those plans had serious negative implications for our communities, for our economy, and for the future of our region. Redwood City Neighbors United and our partner organizations listed here still agree that the salt ponds are the wrong place for development. Around 2006, Cargill partnered with DMB to develop the salt ponds. The project required Bayfill to construct 8,000 to 12,000 housing units and 1 million square feet of commercial office space on 2 square miles of salt ponds designated as open space in Redwood City's general plan. In 2012, Cargill DMB withdrew their development plans in the face of widespread opposition, both locally, regionally, and from many elected officials. After years of intense lobbying by Cargill, Trump's EPA issued a decision in March of 2019 that the salt ponds are no longer protected by the Federal Clean Water Act. The EPA's action removes a significant hurdle to Cargill's plans for paving and building on the salt ponds. Only 7 days after this decision was issued, Cargill and DMB issued a press release stating their intent to move forward with development. Redwood City's Mayor Ian Bain has come out strongly against developing on the salt ponds, and he has been joined by Supervisor Warren Slocum and more than 60 elected officials and environmental groups. In August of this year, 4 Bay Area environmental groups filed a lawsuit against the Trump's EPA Clean Water Act decision, and they were joined by the state of California. So what would development on the salt ponds mean for North Fair Oaks? We are positioned between 2 cities, Redwood City and Menlo Park, that have been flooding our region with development projects. Any saltworks development plan would dwarf current development proposals already in progress in our area. In Redwood City, current and planned development proposals are within the footprint of their existing general plan. Saltworks is not part of that general plan. So things that would fall on all of us to mitigate, like infrastructure funding and other impacts as noted here, have not been accounted for. The salt ponds, currently zoned as tidal plain, would have to be rezoned for housing or office development to take place, and Redwood City Council members have the final say on that. The residents of North Fair Oaks have no say in that decision, but we do not have to be silent. East Palo Alto Mayor Gauthier is an outspoken opponent to building on the salt ponds because her community, like mine, can't vote on this issue. The negative impacts of developing the salt ponds that concern the mayor of East Palo Alto also ring true for other nearby communities, like Menlo Park, Bellhaven, Atherton, and Woodside. So I was going to show a brief 3-minute video, but unfortunately we can't load that video. So I would just encourage all of you to go to the Redwood City Neighbors United website, take a look at our video. It gives a lot of the information that I just gave you, but it has some really great footage of the restoration of the salt ponds at Bear Island. And at the end of this video, we are asking everybody to sign a petition. There are 2 petitions, and I have, I believe, in your agenda packet, a joint statement. I'm not sure if it was included, Mitzi, but there is a joint statement from San Mateo County Supervisor Dave Pine and elected officials and community leaders on opposing development of Redwood City's salt ponds. This is a petition for elected officials and for councils such as this. And this petition, excuse me, is for opposing any development out on the salt ponds. There is a separate petition as part of Redwood City Neighbors United that we have on our website, and I have copies that I brought as a handout here. So if as individuals or as a group, I wasn't sure what process the North Fair Oaks Council uses to sign joint statements like this, but that's also an option. So with that, if you have any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. If council members have questions, please go ahead. Go ahead, Blair.
Politically, does Redwood City, did they annex that land, Cargyle, or is it unincorporated county, or is it some special district with the bay, or?
It is within the footprint of the city of Redwood City.
Okay.
And it is designated in Redwood City's general plan zoning as tidal plain and open space. The only portion that was annexed out there at the end of Woodside Road is, I can't remember the name of that huge building project out there, Seaport Complex, those big, huge buildings out there. That was part of county, but that was annexed by Redwood City years ago. But the salt ponds have always been within the footprint of the city of Redwood City.
Okay.
Go ahead,
So-
Linda.
So what's the plan then, just to, we'll get the information out and generate more petitions? And where are they going to go?
So these petitions are, the joint statement is going to be presented. My colleague is here from Redwood City Neighbors United. Alice, if you could come up. I know the individual petition from Redwood City Neighbors United is, we have over 7,000 signatures on that petition. We're gathering them, and that will be presented to the Redwood City Council. This one from Save the Bay. Go ahead.
Yeah, so, hi, my name's Alice Kaufman. I'm a Redwood City resident, and I am a member of Redwood City Neighbors United. I'm also on staff with an environmental organization called Committee for Green Foothills. We're one of the organizations that brought suit against the US EPA over the Clean Water Act decision, so that I can answer questions about that as well. And like Marcia said, so it is a little confusing with the two different petitions, but the petition that RCNU has created is, obviously anybody can sign, and we have thousands of signatures on that. That's, sort of for individual signatures. The joint statement that has all the elected officials and environmental organizations, including my own, signing on to that is one that Supervisor Dave Pine put out. So that's something that I would imagine if the council wanted to discuss whether you wanted to join that as a council would be something that would be appropriate for you to do. And if you asked where are the petitions going, the RCNU petition is directed towards the Redwood City Council. It basically asks the Redwood City Council not to keep the salt ponds as open space and to do everything they can to move it towards restoration. And the statement actually says the same thing. It says, we urge Redwood City to reject proposals for development on the salt ponds and restore them as wetlands for Bay Area residents and future generations. So that really they both, it's different wording, but they both have the same ask.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, the RCNU petition, is that the one that's the joint statement?
Yeah, that is confusing. And I have handouts. I'm sorry. Could you grab there on there? And I'll pass that out. The RCNU petition is for individuals.
Oh, I see. And that's the link that you provide.
That's
on
the link,
printout.
right.
Okay.
I have the joint statements for elected officials
Okay.
here. I'll leave it with you.
And is that also available online, or
This is not.
that is not?
Yeah, the joint statement for elected officials is not available online. That's
All
why I
right.
brought this. And again, I don't know what your process is for approving signature of a joint statement like this, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that would be, Tim, a matter of, coming to a consensus with the council on providing support for these. Is that correct?
It's a great question. Members of the North Fair Oaks Council are free as individuals and as citizens to join any community effort they wish to support as individuals. However, the board resolution that establishes the North Fair Oaks Council is extremely clear that your body may only act as an advisory body to the Board of Supervisors, and you may not collectively represent any position to anyone other than the Board of Supervisors. So the type of joint statement that's being asked of you is not something that you are empowered to act upon as a body, but again, you are free as individuals to support any petition or statement you wish.
Okay.
Through the chair and Tim.
Go ahead.
This is not an action item
No.
for
it's not.
tonight, so
It's
we're
not.
just getting the information. I was thinking actually on the same lines that as individuals, when we leave this room, we can sign any petition we want. Since Supervisor Slocum, District 4, has already signed on in support of efforts to stop any development.
Yeah, he has signed the joint statement.
Right.
Yeah.
So could we then do not tonight, but do a recommendation to add support to the supervisor's position? So it's kind of,
You are,
we've never had this information brought until from District 4. So how
Right.
can we kind of tag along and add to the support he's already publicly come out supporting?
if you wish to consider a resolution urging the Board of Supervisors to take action of any kind with regard to this proposed development, you are free to make that, that resolution urging the Board of Supervisors to take action. But it wouldn't be on behalf of the North Fair Oaks Council. It would be urging the county to take a particular action.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Any other questions?
Any other
Yeah.
questions from council members? Looks like no. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on this item?
No public comment.
Thank you, Mitzi. And next we have a mental health series update provided by Maggie Cornejo, Legislative Aid.
Good evening, council members and county staff. My name is Maggie Cornejo, and I'm a legislative aide for Supervisor Warren Slocum. As you might know, we had the Wellbeing Academy that was going on for a couple of weeks, and it started in October. On November 12th, our office celebrated the 40 graduates that completed the sessions on the Wellbeing Academy on stigma, immigration, teen suicide, and wellness. And along, the Supervisor Slocum attended, Sheriff Bolanos attended, Assistant Sheriff Mark Robbins, Captain Christina Corpus, and BHRS Director Scott all congratulated the participants. It was a really nice event to see the community all come together for mental health, like educating themselves on mental health and the mental health resources. And our office is hoping to continue to collaborate with other departments to bring other kinds of workshops that are interested to the community in the next year. Are there any questions on that particular subject?
I relayed something to you in an email regarding continuing to support the effort of dealing with mental health issues, such as support groups.
Right.
So I'll say that publicly, that I think however the county can generate more support groups, because a lot of the issues need to be, there's a lot of the parents are sharing the same problems. And that's also a form of treatment and support for the parents. So I just wanted to make sure that that doesn't get lost.
Right.
I know there's some nonprofits that provide that, but I think that's really an important thing to keep as part of the overall plan when we talk about mental health in our community.
Great. And then one of the things that was really nice to see, at least for myself, was that during some of these sessions, parents had the microphone and were just kind of talking about their experiences, whether they have a family member or a friend or a child that is going through something, and they were relating, kind of like comparing situations and what they do and what they've been through. So that was kind of like the first initial thought when we brought this academy, was we wanted to really have some kind of support system and some kind of community like safe space where people could come and just talk and at the same time learn what the county has to offer on this topic.
That's great. Okay. I think you succeeded.
Yeah, we were really happy with the results.
Thank you.
Yeah. So in a different topic, if there's not any other questions, I can move on to some other reports from our office.
Any other questions from council members? Go ahead, Maggie.
Okay.
Thank you.
So on December 11th, there will be another Dumbarton Rail Corridor community meeting that will be at the Fair Oaks Health Clinic. It'll start at 6 p.m. and it'll go until 7:30 p.m. This will be a follow-up meeting to the October 1st meeting where some of you may have attended. I think some of you attended that meeting. And it will be hosted by Samtrans and the Cross Bay Transit partners. And one of the items that is being considered is a stop on Middlefield Road near the Fair Oaks Clinic. And so far, the supervisor is pretty pleased with the progress of the project, and we hope that some of you can make it.
Sorry, can you repeat the date and time,
Yes.
please?
So it's on December 11th, and it's at the Fair Oaks Health Clinic. It'll start at 6 p.m. and it'll go until 7:30. And we don't have a flyer at the time, but I think that our partners that are coordinating it should be sending us something shortly.
Thank you very much.
Yes. And then one last thing. This past Tuesday, the Board of Supervisors held a special board meeting where they adopted a urgency ordinance implementing tenant eviction protections and limiting large rental rates increases, which was effective immediately. And this was in result to AB 1482, which is a state law that was signed by the governor that provides protections against some evictions without just cause, and affords relocation assistance in case of a no-fault just cause evictions. And that particular law will begin in January 1st of 2020. So yeah, it's an overall bill with rent control for the state.
Great. Any questions?
Okay.
Thank you very
That
much.
concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have a county manager's report?
Yes, good evening, council members. My name is Justin Mates. I'm a deputy county manager for the county of San Mateo. I am new to the county manager's office. I'm not new to the county. I was previously a colleague of Mr. Fox in the county council's office, but I was appointed to the county manager's office earlier this month. And when the county went from 2 deputy county managers to 3, there was some rebalancing of assignments. And so I know Ileana Rodriguez has been working with you in the past, but I will be working with this council going forward. And I'm very glad to be with you this evening.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick updates. I want to just start in response to Councilmember Lopez's question earlier regarding the Middlefield Road project and mitigation efforts. We are working on mitigation efforts and also how to keep affected residents and businesses informed of what's happening with the Middlefield Road project. And we'll be coming back in one of your first meetings in 2020 to report back on those efforts. With respect to other news in the county, There was a meeting of the neighborhood response team today, and I will just give you some brief highlights from that. We have noticed a significant increase in graffiti throughout North Fair Oaks, and it seems to be primarily focused throughout the Middlefield Road corridor. Public Works is reporting that the graffiti is much larger than in the past, and it's typically occurring on private property. There's been a lot of costs associated with the mitigation of those efforts, and so if this continues, there may be some serious budget implications with respect to addressing the graffiti. Hopefully it dissipates, but we are noticing an uptick. I also wanted to update you on the NFO City pilot program. We remain dedicated to keeping the North Fair Oaks area clean from illegal dumping and graffiti. In collaboration with the county maintenance workers, our NFO City pilot program manages and mobilizes to provide extra support where needed the most. It seems to be doing pretty well, but I think one thing we are noticing is that there seems to be less dumping or less things on the ground, but actually we think it might just be that we're picking it up more often, and in fact the behavior is still there. It's just that it's getting picked up sooner, which is good, but that there's still an underlying issue that remains that we still need to address. The planning department reports that there were no code enforcement violations issued this month. And then finally, to those members of the council whose terms are up in December 2019, I believe our Office of Community Affairs has received your emails regarding your intention to continue your role on the council, and that office will be following up with you shortly on the next steps. I think that's all I have for you tonight, unless you have any questions for me.
Thank you very much. I don't believe there are any questions at the moment, but again, welcome.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you. Are there any council members' reports? Go ahead, Blair.
I just want to make a plug for the San Mateo County Civics 101 class. I did it from September 11th until November 13th, and you really get to see the big picture of the county, visiting all the departments, touring the jail, the parks. They do it once a year. The gentleman that does it, Eric Forgard, he's who you would sign up with. I can send the link to the county page where they have it. If you're going to stay involved, it's going to give you a bigger picture, so it might be something fun to sign up for next time it's offered. I'll send it to Mitzi, and she can just echo it to whoever. But it was definitely worth the time. It's kind of a commitment with like 10 weeks in a row every Wednesday night, but every department was very friendly and informative, and they usually fed us like right before, so it's a win-win.
So this just finished recently or is about to start?
No, the 2019 one finished. Okay. It went September until November 13th. Ended with like the county manager giving certificates, but we toured Maple Street, we toured Edgewood Park, Belmont Library, just touching all these different county departments that you may not really appreciate unless you spend some time. So I'll just take a picture of it, send it to Mitzi, and then the link to the page, and you can just email the guy and say, can I be on the list for the next class?
Yeah, good idea. Thank you, Blair. Any other reports from council members?
Yeah, I got an email from Maeve Johnson. She works with San Mateo County Health.
Right.
Okay, so the Mexican Consulate of San Francisco will be conducting its annual mobile consulate event here at Fair Oaks on Saturday, December 7th. They will provide service for provision of passports, IDs, and Mexican voting credentials. Services by appointment only. If you go to, well, I'll just throw a number out here. Appointments 1-877-639-4835. is the number to call, but you can also go to a website. It's ConsulMex, ConsulMex. Oh, it's kind of long. Just go to the San Francisco Mexican Consulate website. I'm pretty sure the information is there. So it's good that they're coming here, bringing the information here, and they're going to be providing a service on site. So that's
Right.
good.
If I had known, I just went to the
Oh.
consulate
okay.
last month actually to renew
Yeah.
my passport. But in any case, thank you very
Yeah.
much. And just one last word, I wanted to thank you everybody and each one of you for all your work for this year. Particularly those of you from county. I know that you put a lot of effort and we appreciate it. I also want to thank all the council members for their continued support and their attendance. It's always important to be present in these meetings and participate in other issues that are related to the community. And so we will not have a meeting on December. This is our last meeting for the year. And we'll be back until January. The fourth Thursday of the month, we'll meet again. And Happy New Year and happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.